this very important session, I will give the floor to Khalil Mahshi, the IIEP Director.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Anton, my colleague who facilitated the previous session, made it very easy for me. He explained how we are going to run the whole afternoon sessions. So I will not delight you with my voice. I will start immediately saying I'm very pleased to be facilitating this session, which joins, as the rest of the forum has, joins the youth with a number of ministers. It is very unique and very rare that we have a number of youth from various countries with a number of ministers. Normally, IIP, our institute, deals with ministers of education, ministers of higher education, but all ministers of education. We feel normally when we do that we are in our comfort zone. This time we thought it wouldn't be right just to involve ministers of education. So we involved ministers of labor and ministers of youth and some others. So it's a very unique occasion that we have number of ministries from various countries represented, as well as the youth. The session will try to move into what did we get out of this and what do we expect we will do after this session. I would like to start with the youth because we are after the voice of the youth. And then I would like to say that they each have 4 minutes. I am a firm director. If you exceed the 4 minutes, I will say, I'm sorry, you stop now. And it's not against you personally, ministers and youth. It will be just to make sure that we finish on time. What did you get out of here? And what are now your expectations from what will happen after the forum? And how do you think you would like to commit as youth, and who can commit you as youth? And what do you expect from your countries, your governments, your ministers, ministries of education, youth, labor, and so on, your governments, and others, okay? So we start from the very far, my far right, and please take the microphone, and you have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Barjok. I come from South Sudan, and I work for a local organization known as GUBEA. And GUBEA stands for Greater Upper Nile, Barkazal, and Equatorial Youth Association. Let me begin by quoting a saying which we always say in our local organization. A quote is, "Prepare me today to be a leader tomorrow." This is a quote I would like to begin with. And I'm going to talk on the commitments that we're going to make as youth. And I will leave the other parts, which talks about the government, the expectation that we do expect from our government, to my colleague Henry Swaka. By the way, youth have a vital role, not only in South Sudan, but globally. In this conference, we are committed to formulate national agenda for the youth. This national agenda would incorporate and would be integrated and cohesive, which also will work to allow us to have partnership with the other international youth organizations. We are also committed to see to it that we engaged in political dispensation. At this point, and that's the point where we always enter into loggerhead with politicians. Previously, last year, the youth in South Sudan organized a conference comprising the 4 states out of 10 states in the Republic of South Sudan. After the conference, a certain politician asked me that, Why do you want to go for political dispensation? And I know him, I asked him, how old were you when you were a commissioner? Because I know he was 25. He told me, yes, I was 25. And now he's arguing a youth of 35 that he could not go for a political dispensation. Look, so we actually wanted and we expect to see to it that youth are engaged in a political life and participate effectively. The other major expectation, and not expectation, I mean commitment that we're going to meet as youth is to concentrate on encouraging and strengthening the national education at home. That means in South Sudan, rather than encouraging education system to be abroad, immigration. This is the point where we're going to see it as a commitment because it's making a national education weaker because everyone goes outside, goes abroad for education. Again, we committed to see to it that youth contribute effectively and efficiently towards strengthening Braille system. That's for disability. Again, we committed to work jointly with the other national and international youth organizations to meet the Millennium Development Goals. Thank you very much.
We move forward. I think you're speaking on behalf of both of you. Okay.
Thank you very much. I would make my statement very short. I'm very honored to be in this panel. One thing I would like to bring to our attention is that our cultures affect the way we think about everything. And I think one of the reasons why elders probably think that youth shouldn't be engaged in processes is because of their different cultural beliefs. And I think that is very important for us, both governments and youth, of course, to actually conduct some sensitization. Because in some cultures, youth are not allowed, for example, to even sit with elders. And I think that's one of the reasons why youth find it difficult actually to engage with young people. And I think we are very much privileged because our ministry in South Sudan is actually dealing with three things: culture, youth, and sports. And I would like, therefore, to suggest that since the ministry is dealing with these three aspects, it's very important actually to focus on our cultures, to begin to think about the root causes of the gaps that exist between youth and elders, but also how culturally people perceive women, how they perceive people with disabilities, because again, disability and cultural attitudes is a very important subject to explore. Because in some cultures, people think if you have an impairment, your parents or your grandparents did something wrong, and therefore you've been punished for that. And these are, of course, wrong cultures. I just would like to tell you a very brief story. When I was when we were coming to Paris at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, I was surprised actually to meet a security guard who talked to my colleague, and he said, "Can you please tell your friend I want to check him?" But I was like, "Why don't you talk to me straight?" So it is an issue. You know, on daily basis, people think of us differently, and I think that's something we really need to address. That's why in all forums I must talk about disability. And just to wind up, I want to talk about the issue of education here, because when people talk about inclusive education, when people talk about educating people with disabilities, sometimes it's also meant to be special institutions, which I don't want to encourage, because again, if you only bring together pupils who have disabilities, the way they interact with others is going to be different. I learned with sighted or with non-disabled children and students. That's why I can actually challenge everybody on an equal basis as someone who has no disability. And I just want to say, it's very important for us to look at the different types of needs that we have, but also actually continue to raise awareness on these issues. And I would like to say that youth are very ready. We are actually ready to support our government in the issues of awareness raising, for example, be it about youth, be it about female youth, about youth with disabilities and other marginalized groups. I'm sorry my time is over, but I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity.
You sensed that I was about to say, please finish. That was very good, thank you. Next, please. Would you say who you are and, yes.
Thank you. My name is Ayman Qwaider. I'm from Palestine. I'm a youth activist and conducting my research, PhD research in France. I'd like to start by the last point that my colleague here mentioned, and it's about social awareness. To add to the commitments that my friends already mentioned here, we, our youth, are committed to greatly participate in the social awareness process throughout our local communities. I believe that this forum, the policies that will come up from this forum should be always grounded in the field there. And we believe that youth plays and will play a significant role in synthesizing about social issues in order to bring up the culture of peace, equality, justice, democracy that we are in their need to see in the grounds. So, yeah, this is the point that I would like to put in my recommendation, in my commitments, that youth will be able to bring the state policy of education into grounds. Now let me move to a recommendation. Actually, I built up my recommendation based on the environment that I came from, which is the Arab region. And I found out these are like sort of recommendation that the Arab region, the governments share it amongst us, which is the first point that we want our government to take into consideration the importance role that youth play in setting recommendation. This is, I really want to emphasize on this point that we should contribute in the recommendation of the policy forums, all these kind of things. And we are committed, and we want our government to consider our role in launching advocacy so that policy emanate from youth and are estimated, and are submitted to state rather than having the state adopting policies about youth. We want youth to play an essential role in policies and formulating policies. Secondly, we call upon our governments to put more emphasis on the quality of education, particularly in social science. And this is actually an invitation to our Ministry of Education, the representative Ministry of Education, that coming from the Arab world. We have Palestine, we have Yemen, we have Qatar. That really want you to focus and to take this, to bring it back home. That we need more emphasis on social science. What we see in the Arab world, given the fact that the entire region is undergoing or undertaking a real political transition, as we have been observing what's going on in the Arab world. So therefore, governments should pay more attention to social science disciplines. Third point that I'd like to underline here is capacity building for youth leadership. We should always, as governments, as formal and non-formal actors, should take into consideration youth in the process of development and building capacity. And the last point I'd like to share with you here is outreaching and inclusion of the marginalized young women and men. It's really highly important that we need to build up policies that integrate those marginalized young people, young women and men, and thank you so much.
Merci. Moi, je m'appelle Nathalie Soro, je viens de la Côte d'Ivoire et je suis la présidente de la commission Jeunesse et partenaire de la Commission nationale ivoirienne pour l'UNESCO. Je travaille également en tant que chargée d'études au ministère de la promotion de la jeunesse et du service civique. Je suis également membre d'un réseau de jeunes femmes leaders au niveau international. Et ce que j'aurais à dire ici à l'endroit de notre gouvernement, d'abord notre engagement en tant que jeunes, c'est déjà nous, en tant que jeunes, nous nous approprions les objectifs du millénaire pour le développement. Et à l'intérieur, nous avons le deuxième objectif qui parle de l'éducation pour tous dès le bas âge. Et moi, je parlerai surtout de prendre en compte la question du genre. C'est vrai que mes prédécesseurs en ont déjà parlé, mais je voudrais insister sur la question parce que dans mon pays, nous sortons de crise et il faudrait mettre aujourd'hui la femme au cœur de la reconstruction. Il faut pouvoir aussi lui donner, renforcer les capacités des jeunes filles, les mobiliser autour de la question de la paix et les engager. Nous, nous sommes déjà organisés au sein de la Commission nationale pour l'UNESCO et nous travaillons à la mise en place d'un Conseil national de la jeunesse parce qu'en Côte d'Ivoire, on n'a pas encore ce Conseil national de la jeunesse. Il faut que l'État puisse nous accompagner pour mener à bien ce Conseil national de la jeunesse-là. Que nos préoccupations que nous allons poser à partir de ce Conseil national de la jeunesse soient intégrées dans le plan national de développement et que on puisse nous permettre, nous, de pouvoir agir directement sur nos problèmes, sur les problèmes qui nous concernent. Et en dehors de cela, je voudrais dire que le système éducatif ivoirien lui-même doit être utilisé pour réduire la fracture du genre entre nous. Et réduire aussi, quand je parle du genre, c'est déjà l'égalité entre les sexes, mais aussi entre les différentes catégories sociales que nous représentons. Il faut que cette éducation-là soit de qualité, aussi bien au niveau primaire qu'à l'université. Dieu merci, nous sommes en train d'entrer dans le système LMD. Alors, il faudrait que nous puissions avoir une coopération technique pour pouvoir aider à donner le meilleur de ce système-là à la jeunesse ivoirienne. Et je voudrais terminer pour dire que en Côte d'Ivoire, il y a un grand besoin de restructurer la vision et de réorienter la jeunesse quant à la question de l'emploi. Alors, il nous faut une base de données qui permette d'identifier les besoins des jeunes, une base de données également qui permette d'identifier les besoins des entreprises et de pouvoir créer un partenariat entre les deux mondes. Et il faut que l'enseignement aussi prenne en compte les besoins des entreprises et de pouvoir former une élite jeune dans ce sens-là. Voilà, je pense que mes prédécesseurs ont pris en compte la plupart de mes préoccupations. Je ne vais pas être longue et je voudrais passer la parole à ma voisine et dire merci à l'UNESCO qui nous donne cette opportunité d'avoir droit au chapitre de la décision sur l'éducation. Merci.
Thank you. I would just like to apologize that I won't be able to understand what she said because the translation is not working. But thank you. My name is Claudine Claridad Tanvir, and I come from the Philippines, and I work with the Asia Pacific Association for Basic and Adult Education. So we basically do policy advocacy around youth life skills and Tibet. And now we are currently developing the program in building the youth constituency of young people. So just to say that I absolutely support what my colleagues have said here a while ago. And in fact, they have already reiterated what I'm supposed to say. But just to focus on my organization's focus in terms of policy advocacy and social mobilization, and I want to focus on my set of recommendations for the literacy and life skills for the vulnerable, and my colleague here has already mentioned about that, specifically on young women, the differently abled people, the young people, and the marginalized sector in the community. And I would like to focus on my set of recommendations in terms of access, quality, and financing. No, I would really love to hear more about financing, but I think we're getting into that. Specifically, 3 points. First is to implement multidisciplinary education that integrates life skills to enable transitions to work and life. And to be able to do this, life skills such as critical thinking, communications, negotiation skills, decision-making skills, leadership skills, and peace-building abilities, awareness on gender and indigenous people's rights. No? We have to emphasize the rights-based approach in education, and that this must be part and parcel of any education program, not only at the national level, but also in the commitments made at the international levels as well. Second is to put in place institutional support systems, both in non-formal and formal and some way informal system in our education structures in support of young people's continuing education and participation in society. So we talked a lot about civic engagement, social mobilization, and political participation in political dispensation and all of that. And lastly, the one that the million-dollar point is for the government. We would want to advocate for the government and the partner donors to finance fully costed programs for schools, so that's the formal setting, and second chance learning opportunities that will cater to vulnerable youth and the marginalized sectors, the sectors that I've mentioned earlier. And for that, I think this is this three set of recommendations will be able to fast track our commitments made in the Dakar 2000, the education for all, and also touching on our commitments from the governments, from our own governments and NGOs as well, in terms of providing quality public education for all, especially for the young people. Thank you.
I am very impressed with our youth. They have kept the time very well, and I did not have to say anything. Thank you very much. I'll move to our colleagues, the ministers, and maybe as we started with the youth, we start also the youth from South Sudan. We start with our excellent minister from South Sudan. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Merci. I take the opportunity also to thank you and your group and your team in IIEP to invite us to participate in this very, very significant event. Having heard from the youth, I think there is need to reflect a lot on this, especially for those of you, as you heard from Khalil, the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports from South Sudan, and I've been privileged to hear first from the youth from my country. And I want to say that I agree with all what they said, and I will try to point a few things in relation to what they pointed out. You know, and I have always said this when I was appointed to be the Minister for Culture, Youth and Sports, and I have always told my colleagues, those even who are elder than me, that sometimes we behave as if we were never used in our lifetime. See? But if we were to be conscious that at one point in life we were used before, I think we'll treat the youth of today in the most important way. As you heard from the two gentlemen from my country, culture really plays a very big role. In two ways. Culture can either become an impediment or it can also promote development. I just came from a very short debate in Brussels where the Commission thinks that, the EU Commission thinks that culture should play a major role in development, which is true, but culture can also be a very big impediment to the development of the youth. From our background, and the two gentlemen there will agree with me, when we grew up as small children, no parent ever thought, I'm talking about 30 years ago or 40 years, no parent thought education was very important. So you look at girl children as people as resources, because they're going to be married, and they are going to earn the family's dowry, a lot of cattle. You look at gentlemen, they are going to provide defense for the community. You know, they have to grow up strong men. So the idea of education totally was not a priority, see, until when we had the war for a long time. That is when change really came to our community in South Sudan because of the war. As much as we said the war was bad, but in a way, the war there actually helped educate our people. We had a lot of young people whom we used to call lost children. Now they are called found men and women. You know, they are now big, they have grown up. This is just in line to agree with what the gentleman there pointed on the difficulty with culture. But let me come to what we are planning to do for the youth in South Sudan, having learned history in the past. As I mentioned in the closed meeting of ministers, 70% of the population of this new country, South Sudan, is under 30 years old. And probably 70% or more of this age is uneducated, unskilled. Most of them came from war. They have been fighting for over 25 years. So they lost their time for education. But now they are very energetic. They are very strong. They are at home there. They are the age of Barjok, the tall man there you see. He's probably privileged because he had some education. Some of his colleagues don't have education. Now this is where we have the problem. What do we do for them? What can government do for this whole generation of young people who lost time? They didn't go to school. So we are putting some plans for that. What are we trying to do? First, we recognize that even to do something on the youth, you have to organize them. Because if you don't organize the youth, you will not be able to maximize the contribution that they can make. So what do? We have said, let the youth organize from the levels of the structures that government has. You know, we're a decentralized system. We have something called the BOMA, which is a group of villages with their own administration. Then we have the Payam, like a district. Then we have the county, which is like a province. Then we have the state, which is the highest level of federal, then the nation. So we have said, let the youth organize at those levels. And then apart from this government-led organization of the youth, there are also other levels of organization, like you have Christian or other religious-based youth, political parties-based youth, you have regional based youth associations. Once you have assembled them all organized that way, then you can now bring them together. This is what we are planning now. We want to bring all our youth together and have a dialogue, a real serious debate with them. This is what we are doing now in South Sudan in order to maximize their contribution in planning and in even looking at the programs, you know, what programs can be very effective to affect the youth. So we have very ambitious programs, and I want to mention to you quite a few. If you give me 1 minute or 2 minutes. We are now committed to establish a national youth service, okay? We want to establish vocational training centers because this is where we want to fill the gap. Those youths who could not go for higher education, we train them to do things with their own hands, you know, to be carpenters, to be mechanics, to be engineers, to be plumbers, to be bricklayers, and so on and so forth. And how are we going to achieve this if we are to really have the youth benefit? I'm putting in a very, very ambitious program, which I'm sure will be good news for all of us, particularly even for UNESCO and the rest. You know that South Sudan is an oil-producing country. We will be producing like 350,000 barrels of oil a day. So what I'm pushing cabinet, which will be good news for the youth, not only South Sudan, but many youths also, to hear this as an example, I'm pushing cabinet to put $1 or $2 per barrel for youth activities in South Sudan, so that we can implement these projects. If we do this, we will be earning like $20 million a month for youth activities. Isn't this good news for the youth in South Sudan? And if all governments, thank you very much. If this is going to be adopted, and I'm sure UNESCO and the international community, our government would have gained real credibility, because this is where to spend money. You know, this is where to put money in order for the future, for the bright future of this youth. You know, I come from a university background. I used to teach, and I hate talking for only 5 minutes. I want to talk for 2 hours. But since Mahshi is saying I should stop, let me stop here. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm glad I allowed you the extra minute because it came with money. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Minister from Pakistan, please, sir.
Thank you. I will try to keep myself within the 4 to 5 minutes. Pakistan is a country of 180 million people, and around 63% of the population is under the age of 25 years. The low enrollment at the primary level is further aggravated by the dropout numbers. Hardly 13 to 15% of these complete secondary education, resulting in more than 3/4, which forms an overwhelming majority of youth, to drop out and enter labor market without any foundational or life skills. The task before the government is huge, and with the limited resources available with whatever we have to make the best out of whatever is available. Pakistan is feeling the heat of economic meltdown that has affected the world. Our domestic industry is caught up in a cycle of low production and decreasing demands. The youth is bearing the brunt due to the high unemployment, due to shrinking formal sector, particularly in the manufacturing sectors. Pakistan is, however, mindful of the shifts in global economies to the service sector, which has opened up new avenues for the employment of youth. The catch, however, is the provision of competency-based training, wherein the skills of youth are matched with skills demanded by the market. I have shared already with my group, the groups that we had discussion with, Pakistan's initiative to provide skills to youth and also to target the dropout rate through National Commission of Human Development and the National and Vocational and Technical Education Commission that we have in Pakistan for the last few years. The Ministry of Youth Development was devolved to the provinces after the 18th Amendment in 2012. Now it's the responsibility of the provincial governments to come out with the strategies as far as the development of youth is concerned. Special targets for youth development have been devised in consultation with youth to increase the engagement in the community development and programming social networking. There is a need for creation of youth engagement committees for management and supervision of youth activities. Provincial youth councils are under the chief ministers of that concerned province, which are being constituted, which will serve as a contact point between the youth and the policy and the decision makers. I think this is very important. Apart from this, Pakistan has a youth parliament, which is a civil society initiative fully supported by the government of Pakistan, which focuses on the youth in the country and the youth awareness education by training in the norms of politics and democracy in the country. We believe that sustainable democracy and sustainability of the sound democratic institutions is not possible unless we involve youth in the democratic process. The youth discuss all issues affecting youth with a specific focus on how these are handled by the parliamentarians. These discussions are moderated by the sitting members of the parliament. Young Parliamentarians Forum in the National Assembly. This is a forum in the parliament which comprises of the parliamentarians between the age of 25 and 30 years. So we have quite a number of parliamentarians sitting in the parliament which are in between 25 to 30 years old. So this forum would discuss the issues of the youth within the parliament first. There is a caucus which discusses all these issues, and then they will go back to their constituencies, get the feedback, and would try to incorporate that feedback in the cabinet or in the concerned committees that we have in the parliament. So this is a very effective way of incorporating the ideas in policy making by the youth in Pakistan. I would just try to give an example of informal contribution of youth in a political system and how they can help decision makers. In Pakistan, if you want to be a member of parliament, either it's a provincial parliament or the federal parliament, you cannot win an election without the help of youth. During a campaign, it's the youth basically who drives the campaign. It's the youth who would, in Pakistan, there's a phenomenon of raising slogans. You know, you have more people to raise your slogans, you're a very popular man. So it's the youth, you know, who would be able to manage those slogans. It would be youth which would manage your polling stations on the day of election, the last day. It would be youth who would make sure that you have a very successful procession or a public meetings or the corner meetings in your campaign. But the dilemma is once the election is over and you become the member of the parliament, youth is nowhere. So what we are trying to do is to encourage the political parties to give a formal role, to channelize this effort which they do for them while they are contesting elections, by giving them a role in their party constitution. We also encourage the political parties to award tickets to their young political workers so they can contest elections on their tickets and come back and sit in the cabinet to be a part of policy making. I know I will just try to, sum up. I know you have just taken the... as a plan, we plan to engage youth as members of the governing bodies of the various ministries. Ministries are basically responsible for running organizations. All organizations have their governing boards or the board of governors. So we have 30 to 40% of the youth representing themselves on those board of governors. Creation of youth wings in the Ministry of Education to engage youth in the policy making, and that is something which has worked in few ministries, not all of them, but yes, it was beneficial. The government needs to be more interactive with youth through social network websites and allow freedom of expression and dialogue with youth. The government should also mobilize the youth networks already in place and activate them for effective feedback on the governmental policies. I am connected to my constituency through Facebook. Sometimes I get a lot of odd comments, but yes, and constantly get this input from youth who are Facebook users in millions in Pakistan. I would echo what ILO's director, John Somovia. We must not allow for there to be a hope gap. When youth fall into a cycle of unemployment and start to believe they will not emerge from it, young people's involvement in finding solutions to employment is essential, and for that involvement to exist, the hope for a decent job must be kept alive. We need to give them hope and ownership of the policy-making process. Thank you.
Monsieur le Ministre, Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la parole. Je tiens à remercier l'organisation pour l'honneur qui est fait à mon pays, la République démocratique du Congo. Nous tenons à remercier aussi les jeunes qui se sont exprimés aussi. Je crois que leurs préoccupations sont fondées, nous devons en tenir compte. Je regroupe mon intervention autour de quelques points. Le premier point, c'est celui de la paix. C'est ce que nous avons identifié ici. Parler de la République démocratique du Congo et de la paix, c'est très important parce que avec tous les conflits récurrents que nous avons dans notre pays, surtout dans sa partie orientale, il est important que nous arrivions à résoudre le problème de la paix à notre pays. Et en examinant cette notion, nous constatons que l'éducation est très importante en République démocratique du Congo. On ne manipule pas difficilement une personne instruite. Nous constatons que la plupart des politiciens qui sont adultes, ils essayent d'utiliser le dynamisme de la jeunesse pour les amener dans les conflits. Donc nous devons faire un effort pour que nous arrivions à éduquer cette jeunesse pour qu'elle ne puisse pas être manipulée facilement. La deuxième chose, c'est que nous devons tout faire pour que la notion de la paix soit une partie intégrante de la réforme de notre système éducatif. Nous devons responsabiliser davantage cette jeunesse. Nous avons institué au niveau de chaque école de la République démocratique du Congo, nous avons autour de 40 000 écoles. Chaque école avec un petit gouvernement, un petit parlement, pour permettre aux jeunes de commencer à se prendre en charge, de se préoccuper déjà, de prendre l'initiative, de s'occuper des problèmes qui se posent au niveau de chaque école. Nous tenons toujours au niveau de la paix, favoriser la formation de la jeune fille, parce qu'elle est au-delà de 50% de notre population, donc il est important que nous nous occupions de la formation de la jeune fille, en insistant aussi sur les notions de la citoyenneté. Le deuxième problème important que nous aimerions évoquer, c'est celui de la professionnalisation. Ce sont des notions très importantes pour nous. Nous avons un problème historique. C'est que quand nous avons eu notre indépendance, il fallait remplacer tout de suite là les colonisateurs qui partaient. Donc on devait amener remplacer les administratifs, ce qui fait qu'on a laissé de côté les problèmes réels de la reconstruction du pays, les problèmes de développement. Aujourd'hui, on se rend compte que pour reconstruire le pays, il faut mettre l'accent sur la formation professionnelle. Vous avez constaté par exemple que le Congo, c'est un grand producteur par exemple de diamants, mais vous n'avez pas d'école qui s'occupe par exemple de la taille du diamant. Donc ce genre de problèmes doivent être résolus pour le moment. Nous devons réorienter notre enseignement en créant des écoles qui s'occupent des problèmes réels de notre population, notamment ceux qui concernent les problèmes agricoles, les problèmes des mines et autres. Nous avons aujourd'hui près de 7 millions. Nous devons contextualiser aussi les différentes recommandations qui nous ont été faites ici. Au Congo, nous avons près de 7 millions d'enfants qui sont en dehors de l'école, de 6 à 18 ans. C'est beaucoup. Donc pour nous, la préoccupation serait que tous ces enfants rentrent à l'école, même si après, bien sûr, nous devons essayer d'améliorer la qualité de la formation qu'on va donner à tous ces enfants. L'avant-dernière chose que nous aimerions évoquer, c'est que nous devons, les recommandations que nous venons d'avoir ici vont nous permettre d'améliorer, d'enrichir la stratégie que nous avons déjà élaborée dans l'emploi jeune, dans l'occupation, dans la prise en charge des problèmes de la jeunesse dans notre pays. Et enfin, le problème le plus important, c'est certainement le rôle de l'État. Je crois que l'État doit jouer un rôle moteur pour que des différentes recommandations qui sont faites puissent être réalisées. Et nous tenons à ce que tous ici, étant membres de l'UNESCO, que rentrer dans nos pays, nous puissions organiser aussi des séminaires, essayer de réfléchir comment nous pouvons, au niveau de chaque pays, mettre en œuvre ces différentes recommandations. Voilà ce que je peux dire dans le cadre de notre présentation tout à l'heure. Merci.
Merci, Votre Excellence. Je vous remercie très bien. Finally, last but not least, the Minister of Youth from Yemen, and I will try to translate from Arabic into English. Okay, and the Minister promised to be brief.
Hello. Yes. في البداية أنا سعيد للحضور هذا الاجتماع للعمل مع الشباب الذي تنظمه منظمة اليونسكو.
He is pleased to be here and to be working with youth, the meeting organized by UNESCO.
لقد كان للشباب دور كبير في عملية التغيير باليمن. لدينا اليوم رئيس جديد ولدينا حكومة وفاق وطني ولدينا 2 وزراء من الشباب.
The youth have played a major role in change in Yemen. Now we have a new president and we have a national unity government and we have 2 ministers who are really youth.
هذا يحملنا كشباب مسؤولية كبيرة في أن ننجح لنعطي أكبر فرصة ممكنة من الشباب لتبوء مناصب قيادية في المستقبل.
This is a big responsibility on the shoulders of youth, the youth, and we look forward to fulfilling the best expectations.
ونحن في وزارة الشباب والرياضة في اليمن بدأنا بخطوات عملية لإشراك الشباب في عملية صنع القرار.
We in our ministry, youth and sports, have started taking practical measures to involve youth in the decision making.
حيث سيعقد اللقاء الموسع للمنظمات والمبادرات والهيئات والناشطين الشباب وذلك لاختيار هيئة استشارية شبابية لوزارة الشباب والرياضة.
A big national meeting for youth will be soon organized in order to elect a council of youth which will advise on policy for the ministry.
تهدف إلى مشاركة الشباب في صنع القرار في وزارة الشباب والرياضة وأيضا المشاركة في التنفيذ وكذلك الرقابة على التنفيذ.
So the youth will be involved in policy advice, policy making, in implementation and in monitoring the implementation.
الشيء الثاني نحن على وشك لإطلاق موقع إلكتروني متكامل فيه كل المعلومات الإدارية والمالية والفنية نهدف منه إلى تنفيذ مبدأ الشفافية وحق الحصول على المعلومة وذلك تنفيذا لمبادئ الحكم الرشيد.
We are soon launching an internet site in order to be transparent, talking about what we do, and therefore we follow the transparency principle. And good governance, sorry.
وذلك لأننا نريد أن يكون الشباب فعلا هم صانعي عملية التغيير.
We would like youth to be the people who are the change agents and who will effect change.
هناك الكثير مما يحتاجه الشباب ولكن طريق ال1000 ميل يبدأ بخطوة.
There are many things which the youth need, but the long journey starts with the first step.
شكرا مرة أخرى.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I will not try to sum up for you or digest for you. I will thank the youth participants. I will thank their excellencies, the ministers, both for the good comments, but also for keeping the time. I would like us to move forward immediately to the next session, if you do not mind. Thank you so much, colleagues, youth, and ministers. Shukran.